Good morning and welcome to the Fire in the Belly. We're talking here, boardroom talk here with the outstanding Pat Slattery. So good morning, Pat.
Good morning, Pete.
Listen, thank you so much for coming on. And again, we've picked a nice little topic for today. We are talking about goals and milestones. And first of all, Pat, a very, very happy birthday to you on this momentous occasion.
Thank you.
Thank you. You've hit a bit of a milestone then.
Yeah, well, it depends on what way you think of it, right? I mean, some people say to me, what does it feel like to hit 50, right? I've just for those that don't know, I've hit 50 years today, right? So I just became 50 years old and said, well, what does it feel like to be 50 now? I said, it feels like 27 because I've always thought I was only 26. Now I feel like I'm 27. But look, it is a way of measuring life and measuring things. And having a chat with one of my sons yesterday, and he said, like, 50, Dad, 50 is old, and we're having a bit of a wind up. And I said, you see, you got to put it in perspective, right, in terms of time. And you think about the different milestones, because, you imagine me at 50 years of age, right? What is 1 year of my life at 50 years of age? Just 2% of my life, right? Now you imagine 1 year to a 5-year-old child, and that's 20% of their life. So it's how you measure it in perspective. Or you imagine 1 year to a 100-year-old person. It's only 1% of their life. So, when we start looking at milestones, we have to understand that, the perception we have of those milestones. But it's, for me, each of those milestones is really all about what you do between them. Is what you do in between them. So reaching a milestone at 50, I'm thrilled because I still have another 62 years to go. I'm not even halfway there yet, right? And but when I start thinking about the milestones, the things I've achieved, and somebody messaged me, a nephew of mine actually messaged me to wish me happy birthday. And he said, like, Pat, he said, whoa, he said, so much that you achieved, and you just only hit 50 years old. And I said, what's the next 50 going to be like? So, that's what we got to think. And when we start thinking, I mean, look, Pete, to be honest, you've chosen my topic this morning, that's for sure. Right. I mean, when it comes to goals and milestones, this is something, and maybe I'll share something which you have never shared before, right, this morning when we're talking to people. But like, I have written many workbooks and goal settings. I actually believe I've created the best goal setting program in the world, and it's been used by thousands of people. So I guess I have some experience in this topic, right? But when we understand it, like, the goals and milestones, and understand how to manage both and what needs to happen. This is something that I suppose I understood, and something I got involved in so long ago. And I would even say even before I understood what it is that I was doing. Now, this might sound bizarre because, and the reason I say this, because there's some people going to be paying attention to this, what we're going to be talking about here. And maybe you'll start realizing that you're already involved in this process. And you may not be aware, or maybe you not have an understanding of what it is that you're actually doing. So for me, I was always a dreamer, right? And I didn't always say what I was thinking or dreaming about, by the way. Sometimes I did. That's what got me into trouble when I was in school. I was a bit of a dreamer who dreamt out loud. But the reality is, I didn't always think or say what I was thinking or dreaming. But I can tell you, I began achieving small wins over the years at the beginning of this journey that I was on. And I think I recognized them, but I kept them to myself. And, for some people here who are maybe listening here and getting an understanding of this, so maybe you keep them to yourself, and that's okay. Because for me, I kept them to myself, but I used them to motivate myself and keep me focused. And there's something I really learned how to be patient. And when people are setting goals, I think people have to lose their impatience and become impatient with the goals or expectations, particularly when they express those goals, and particularly when they put them out there publicly. I encourage people to do that, but I want to work on both sides. So you get to understand the both sides. And sometimes you don't need to tell the world. You just need to take ownership of it yourself and understand it. And when you're on the way, you start making those wins. It's so important, though, that you recognize them. And I recognized a lot of my wins in the early days, and even kind of coming with me on the journey, who were bringing me there. I didn't share it all of them all of the time because I just didn't feel that I felt maybe the conversation might get in the way of the process. But I recognized it, and I kept going regardless. And I really learned how to be patient. So I think it was Diana Ross who's quoted to say, instead of looking at the past, I put myself ahead 20 years. And then I try to look at what I need to do now in order to get there then. And that's something that I've done, and it's something I continue to do. And when we talk about the milestones are what goes on in between, right? So we'll talk a little bit and give a definition of milestone later on. But for me, again, I put myself ahead 20 years now. And then I try to look. Now remember, when I say I try to look, so therefore I visualize, I imagine what it's going to be like. I see the process. And then I ask myself, what do I need to do now in order to get there then? And that simply sums up goal setting. So that's it, call's over. Right? But the importance of being patiently persistent is incredible here, particularly with your goals and what it is you want to achieve. But we're going to talk a little bit this morning how you can do it better, how you can do it faster as well, and how achievable it is, and how to recognize the steps. So I guess if we're going to go on, we need to define goal setting and give people an understanding of goal setting. So goal setting is a process of deciding what you want to accomplish and devising a plan to achieve the result that you desire. Now, for entrepreneurs, goal setting is an important part of business planning. It's just really important. Now, we're not going to just talk all about business today, okay, because we want to get people to focus on their personal goals as well. Now, again, as I'm going to talk here this morning, I'm going to say to people, everything I'm going to share with you here is just my opinion. And it's an opinion based on experience that I've spent over most of my life now, I guess, at this stage in this area, okay? So you got to dig deep here and find what I'm going to share that's going to be relevant to you. And I'm going to make this as simple as I can. For me, I need to dumb it down. I need to make it as easy as I can possibly make it easy for me, so it's more doable. So I'm going to share it with you in the best way I can to try and simplify what this is, okay? So bear with me this morning on this one, because I could talk all day about goal setting, right? But again, to understand it, for effective goal setting, you need to do more than just decide what you want to do. Okay, you also have to work at accomplishing whatever goal you have set. And this is so important that people understand this, because I see a lot of people talk about right now just writing goals. And I'm going to talk about the importance of writing goals as well. But just writing the goals, creating the vision board, and people creating beautiful vision boards. And that's wonderful. But that's just the start. That's just the start. In order for that to happen, you're going to have to do something different in order to get to where you need to get to. Now, when you start thinking about this and you understand you have to do the work, some people might think their work is beneath them. Some people might think that their work is too difficult. That's just the ego getting in the way again, right? So we get rid of the ego and don't have it stop you from doing what you need to do. Okay, and you have to start believing in yourself. Again, to quote the magnificent Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali says that impossible is just a word thrown around by small men who find it easier to live in the world that they've been given rather than to explore the power they have to change it. Impossible is not a fact, it's an opinion. Impossible is potential. Impossible is temporary, and impossible is nothing. And that is to quote the great Muhammad Ali, and I think his story speaks for itself. So when we start talking about goal setting, for me, I've discovered that many people feel as if they're kind of lost in the world, or a bit adrift, or a bit out there, right? They work hard, but they don't seem to be getting anywhere worthwhile. So why is that? And this is what we got to understand, because working just hard, because I didn't mention you have to do the work, right? But just working hard is not the answer either. We have to find how we can create a combination of all the things we need to do in order to achieve the goals. So why do most people that I have discovered, that I've met, who work hard, don't seem like they're getting anywhere worthwhile for them? And I think it's really important to understand too here, when we talk about what's worthwhile, is what's worthwhile to you. It's not about comparing yourself to anybody else. It's what's worthwhile to you. This is your goal. So a key reason I found that people feel this way is that they haven't spent enough time thinking about what they want from life. And sometimes what happens is they see something in a movie, or they see somebody else on social media, and I go, oh, I'd like that too. And they allow other people to think, oh, I'd like that. Oh, that looks great. That looks cool. I'd like that. I'd like that. I'd like that. Right? Instead of actually sitting there and thinking about what you truly want from life. What do you truly want from life? And most people don't do this, because most people are running around with this busy world right now. We're in such a fast-paced, moving world that there's so much at our fingertips. There's so much information coming from everywhere. And therefore, it's not allowing people to think. So sometimes you got to sit back and say, okay, let us think about what you want from life, because everything begins with a thought. And this is where it begins. And this is where goal setting really, really begins. So what you got to do is to start thinking about what you want from life. And again, then set about setting yourself formal goals. Okay. Because I mean, after all, would you set out on a journey with no idea where you're going? If you decide I'm going off on a journey today, and you set out on that journey, you have no idea where you're going, would you do that? Probably not. No. Sometimes you may, right? But for the majority of people, if they have a good idea where they're going, they know how they're going to get there, they set out and plan the route. Okay. So again, goal setting is a powerful process for thinking about your ideal future and for motivating yourself to turn your vision of the future into a reality. The process of setting goals will help you choose where you want to go in your life. But by knowing precisely what you want to achieve, you know where you have to concentrate your efforts. You will quickly also spot distractions that can so easily lead you astray. And most people get led astray because we're in a world that's full of distractions. So we have to understand why setting goals is so important. So why do you set goals? Because goal setting, again, if you think about goal setting, it's used by some of the top athletes and most successful business people and the high achievers in all fields. Anyone you know who's a high achiever in any area, I promise you, they have set goals. They understand this. Because setting the goals will give you a long-term vision and a short-term motivation. And I will touch on that and I'll give you more explanation into this. And I'm going to give you some tips later actually to discover how to do this. Okay. So remembering that it's going to give you a long-term vision, but also a short-term motivation. It focuses your acquisition of knowledge and it helps you to organize your time, your resources, so you can make the very most out of your life. That's what goal setting is going to do you. So by setting sharp, clearly defined goals, you can measure and take pride in achievement of those goals. And you will see forward progress in what might previously have seemed like a long, pointless grind. You will also raise your self-confidence as you recognize your own ability and competence in achieving the goals that you have set. Now, the reason I say that you were set, because it's so important that you set your own goals. Because I've met a lot of people who, and people who come to me and go, Pat, I don't know what the goals. What do you think I should do? I mean, that's not for me to decide, and it's not for anybody to decide. I can make some suggestions, but certainly it's not for me to decide. This is for you to do, and it's not for anybody else to decide. You got to choose what it is you want in your life. And if you really choose, if you allow yourself to think about it, and you allow yourself to become involved and make the definitive decisions around what it is you want, that grind, that hard grind that you're doing, that pointless grind, that's not getting you that sense of achievement, will stop. It will change. So, and again, once we understand the importance of measurement and how to measure it, again, things will change. Your confidence will go through the roof. Most people say to me, I'm not that confident, or I'm not as confident as you, or not as confident as somebody else. You be as confident as you need to be. And you will be once you understand your definitive goal, once you understand why it's so important to you. And when you have that level of confidence in yourself and your belief of that goal and what it is you would love to truly have, you will be amazed how able and competent that you become in achieving that goal that you've set. So, but only if it's your goal. Your goal should be specific, it should be time constrained, and it should be difficult. Now, people go, what? Oh, I hear people talk about SMART goals all the time, right? Your goals should be difficult. Now, the reason it should be difficult is because if difficult goals they're ideally set at the toughest area of performance. Okay. Now, assuming that motivation and not ability is limiting your attainment to the level of performance, by the way. Okay. Now, because more found the right motivation or the right inspiration, right? So it's not your ability that's getting in the way, maybe a lack of motivation. And when you look at and sometimes your motivation comes from outside sources, inspiration comes from the inside. Okay. And when you got to build up your motivation to move towards a goal, if it seems too difficult, usually what happens is when difficult goals are set for people, they start looking at their environment and who in their environment. And by the way, most people in your environment won't have achieved your goal. They couldn't possibly, because it's your goal. Right? So it should be difficult, and that's what's going to set you apart. And not only that, your brain gets excited by difficult goals, by big goals. It doesn't get excited by small goals. It gets excited about big goals. So, when we start understanding this, as long as you understand and accept the goal, this is you will have the ability to attain it. And by the way, you can't have conflicting goals, okay? Conflicting goals are usually things that you set as a goal just to please somebody else, or what other people think you should do. Or if I get here, then I'll be able to start on my real goal. So if you understand, if you don't have conflicting goals and you really accept your goal and you understand that you have the ability to attain it, then there's going to be a positive linear relationship between the goal difficulty and the task performance. Right? It's the task performance, but usually it's people down. The
Just-
level of the go ahead.
Break that down for us, Pat. I mean, you talk about, goals not being your own, it's somebody else's goal. I mean, what's the sniff test for that? How can you check it out for yourself?
Well, for me, and again for thousands of people I've worked with, Pete, it is literally about taking that time to think, being a dreamer. And like when I go back in my childhood, I can go so far back. It's ridiculous how far back I can go now. When I review again on mature reflection, and I look back on my life and I think about all the things and the things I've achieved and the goals I set for myself, and some goals that some people might have not thought to be a big deal for some people, but it was a big deal for me and it was important to me. So I said about them and I dreamed about them and I thought about them, and I thought about them so often that there were times I became upset about them, even that I was that level of emotion, and sometimes during that level of upset it was pain, thinking, would I ever achieve it? Am I ever going to be capable? Because those questions come in too, right? When you start looking at goals, then you go back to, no, I'm accepting this is my goal. This is what I can really do. And sometimes when I looked at other people, because I had role models growing up, I looked at other people in my life and I thought, oh, I just want to be so like them. And that was possibly part of the beginning for me. I wanted to be like them. I wanted to be known as well as they were knowing. I wanted to look like them in some cases. And, so I set about doing what they were doing. But along the way, I realized, yes, that's magnificent, by the way. And I still recommend that people do that. But then I thought, what about me? Maybe there's actually more. And as you start achieving what those other people achieve, you start realizing, actually, I can do more. It's not about being better than them. It's about being better for you. And when you start allowing yourself to really think about the possibility and how achievable it is, it's incredible. And in my opinion, this requires taking time to have that mature reflection, that quiet reflection. And 50 years of age yesterday, that's what I spent my day doing, believe it or not. I set myself goals for the next 20 years now. I spent yesterday reflecting on my life and reflecting on everything that I've achieved and I've done. But is it enough? No. No, it's enough for some people. I'm quite proud of my achievements, good and bad, but I never saw there was struggles. There was a lot of pain along the way too. But the reality is usually the pain that comes is when you're trying to please other people, or where you're holding on to a belief system that has been introduced by somebody else. But all of my best of achievements are things when I done what I felt I wanted to do, and I could bring the best of my ability to do it and make it happen. And I've achieved some pretty amazing things. And I say this not egotistically. I want to say this because I know that anybody else who's paying attention to this, you can do it. But it really began to change for me when I started understanding goal setting and understanding those milestones along the way, and sometimes being patient. It's often like, I remember going out on the bike. I was practicing for the Camdam Challenge last year. It was this day last year I was leaving Vietnam to come home, right? And but in the lead up to that, months before that, I remember one time I got this crazy notion, right? I hadn't been on the bike that long, but I decided I was going to get on the train with my bike to Sligo. Now, for anybody who doesn't know where this is from where I live, if you're watching from anywhere else, I think it was 183 kilometers away where I went to, and I was going to cycle home. And of course, I followed the Google Maps on my phone, which will bring you the shortest distance. Of course, when I planned the goal, I didn't plan it very well in this case, right? And I followed the Google Maps, which all of a sudden brought me up over mountains because it was the shortest route, right? Not very good for being on the bike, especially with some of the conditions of some of the roads. But I do remember sitting there thinking, my God, what am I doing here? This was crazy. Am I able to do this? Is this beyond my ability? Is this beyond what I'm capable of for a moment? And then I sat there and thought, no, why am I doing this? Why is it important to me? What was I really wanting to achieve here for me? And I reminded myself of why I was doing it and who I was doing it for. And the first person I was doing it for was me, by the way. Because I could change people's lives by what I had chosen to do and what I chose to get involved in. And I found that inner inspiration. I found that motivation to keep going, to do more. So I got back on the bike and kept going. It took me a bit longer than I expected, but I didn't care. And that's what happened. And along that road, I met some people. But when I was on those roads in the mountains, and we take it in the old term of a milestone, it means each mile you travel, there's a stone to mark each mile. And there was quite a few of those miles that I was on my own. And when I had to go up the hill, and I will never get the rain that fell one day, and I was going up, I was climbing a mountain on a bike, which wasn't really fit for purpose. And rain was coming down, and that was probably some of the toughest miles. And I was on my own for those, but it doesn't matter. I knew the goal was here. I was going to reach the next mile, the next mile, the next mile, and the next one, and the next one. And I could only do it, one push at a time. And when I reached the next milestone, I felt really good about it. And I said, yeah, brilliant. That's one less. I'm on the right track. I'm going to keep moving. And it's the same when it comes to your life. Sometimes milestones are going to be difficult. Some are going to be easier than others. But you keep going regardless. And once you discover, it's your goal, it's important to you, and you understand that you have the ability to attain it, you'll do whatever it takes. You'll keep going. But this is the beauty. Each time I took a mile closer, I knew I was a mile closer. I'm a mile closer. I'm a mile closer every time. Sometimes they're going to be much more difficult than others. Sometimes you will have the right people beside you. Times you're going to have to go it alone. But you mark your milestones. You know what the next step is. I knew I had 183 kilometers to travel. And trust me, every time one more passed, I was happier. And I can tell you the last 20 kilometers were the easiest. Now, I took a break in the middle. Didn't do it all in one day. Right? But I found other ways of me to maintain that milestone, to keep moving. So again, once you accept the goal and you understand that you have the ability to attain it, you'll do it. Now, and again, that was a difficult goal, right? Because I hadn't trained enough to do that. But I knew for me, once I achieved that, then going to Cambodia and Vietnam is going to be easy, right? So, again, when you understand the difficult specific goals actually lead to a significantly higher performance than easy goals or no goals, or even setting the goals like urging other people to do their best, because you can't depend on other people all the time, right? So you have to hold your ability. You have to be constant with your ability, or being consistent with action. Now, this is a theory of motivation, by the way. So when we start thinking about motivation, people say, how do I find motivation? And then you have to be consistently hold your ability to do it, that belief too. But you've got to be consistent with action. Okay, this is going to be key as you start moving towards setting those goals. And once you understand that, this is how you're going to discover your motivation. If there is a goal commitment, the higher the goal, the higher the performance. Right? So the higher the goal, the higher the performance, if there is goal commitment. And this is where you're going to dig deep. And I'm going to share with you some tips and tools in a while. I'll share with you that you can use for this. But the other side of it is when we understand the praise and the feedback that you get, or the involvement of other people in decision making will influence your behavior to the extent that it leads to setting and committing to specific difficult goals, right? So you get involved with other people sometimes. you maybe go public with your goals, and you hope to have people to hold you to account. And maybe there are other people who you need to bring on board who have to play a part in order for you to get where you need to be at. But understanding when you're doing that, you've got to find the praise. You have to share your successes too. When you start achieving goals, you have to recognize those that are important, that are playing their part. Sometimes more so than yourself. But like I said, I saw it. I saw it when I set out years ago to achieve goals. I saw it, but I recognized and gave recognition to other people. When I knew what the part I was playing, I could see the goal come into fruition. Now, this obviously depends on other people as well, and if they want to help you achieve a goal, right? So you got to pick the right people. Okay, but remember this. I'm going to say something to you. Actually, I want people to think about, because some people who want to set goals, and there's always other people to consider in certain ways, right? And the biggest fear, of course, as we all know about setting goals, is what will people think about me if I go out and try to achieve something. But I want you to understand this: those people who don't believe in you right now, or those people who don't believe in you in the beginning, are the same people who are going to boast about knowing you once you start achieving your goal. So remember that. And this is not being disrespectful to those people either. It's okay, they don't get it. They haven't understood where you're at. They haven't got to this space yet. But the people who will challenge you, the people who come across as the disbelievers, or the people who joke or have a bit of a wind up on you at your expense, those people, I promise you, are the people that will boast about knowing you once you start achieving your goal. Oh, I remember so and so. You only live down the road from me, or I remember them going to school. I remember. Oh, you maybe you've had this conversation yourself about some people, right? People that you might not have believed in. Or I've often heard people go, "Geez, I remember that person in school should have had a brain. They had the brain between their ears. Look at them now. I know them well, right?" So people will boast about knowing you. So just understand that when you're feeling challenged about what people might think. There's going to come a time they're going to want to let people know that they know you in some way, shape, or form. So again, when we think about goal setting, in addition to affecting the three mechanisms of motivation, which are choice, effort, and persistence, okay, we can also have a cognitive benefit. It can influence choice, effort, and persistence to discover ways to attain the goal. You may even become solution focused. Imagine that. Imagine that. If you understand that you set these goals, and it can spark those three mechanisms for motivation, and you start this process, you start discovering new ways, and you start discovering a persistence that you never knew you even had, and you start making better choices, and therefore you do twice as much, you put in twice as much effort, that all of a sudden the only thing you become aware of is solutions. That's all. Imagine that. That is very possible and very doable for everybody. So setting your goals can affect your outcomes in 4 different ways. So let's talk about choice. Goals may actually narrow someone's attention and direction, will probably direct your efforts towards your relevant goal activities and dismiss irrelevant actions. Because once you start thinking differently, you start making better choices. When you set your goals, you think about the goal, and we're going to write them down. We're going to get through this in terms of what you need to do in order to make that happen. But once you set those goals and you set them on purpose with intention, they will actually narrow your attention. This is when we talk about putting those blinkers on. And then all of a sudden, when you get those blinkers on, and you narrow your attention, and you have that definitive goal, and you put your attention towards that, your efforts become greater. They become greater towards goal-relevant activities. And the things that get in the way just don't become important anymore. You will stop doing some things, because when it comes to setting goals, you're going to have to start doing things, and then you're going to have to stop doing things. That's the reality. Okay. And then when we talk about goals, and we have our choice, we have to talk about effort. Okay, so goals may actually make someone more effortful. I believe that's a word, right? But to make people more effortful. For example, if I remember even in my old days working in the manufacturing, right? We had a task to do a certain amount of widgets, let's call them, per hour, right? So if someone usually produces 4 widgets per hour, but really wants to produce 6 widgets per hour, then they may work harder to produce more widgets than they would without the goal. Right? So this is the important. It creates more effort. It makes people more effortful. Once you have a goal, once you set out something that you want to achieve. Or we see people who go running, people who are marathon runners, where they set their clock and the goal is to beat the time each time. So therefore they have to make more of an effort because they've set that goal, they've set that challenge. So then we talk about persistence. And if you understand the power of persistence, you'll notice that goals may actually make someone make them more willing to work through setbacks. Because there are setbacks, there are always going to be setbacks. But if you have that level of persistence, and this is something I discovered I had many years ago that I'm grateful to have, that I can be persistent, but I can be patiently persistent. And and when people understand this, no, there may be some other people who might think that, but I had to be persistent, the setbacks are small. That's okay too. And, but for you, you got to understand the goals will probably make you more willing to work through setbacks because it creates that level of persistence. And then we have to talk about cognition. Goals may cause somebody to develop and change their behavior. Now imagine that. Imagine that, changing your habits, setting those goals, those positive goals, those definitive goals that allow you to develop and change your behavior. Because when it comes to achieving whatever it is you desire in life and that fulfilled life that you truly desire, if you're not living it right now, then finding an opportunity by setting goals to develop and change your behavior, it's going to change your life. So imagine that. And I say imagine that purposely because I truly want you to imagine that. Think about it. Now, again, because we're talking about goals and we're talking about milestones, if we talk about milestones for a moment, right? We got to think about when you define milestones for yourself, what you're really doing is you're building a ladder towards your goals. Now, the more rungs you add to the ladder, the easier the climb, right? So we also understand that taking the first steps can be challenging. And for those who have never done it before, the tougher challenge actually comes first, which is carving out the steps. That can be the toughest challenge is what comes first, carving out the steps, allowing yourself to take the time to think without any other people's influence, unless it's a good influence, without considering the fear or considering what other people might think if it's not a good outcome. You're going to have to carve out the steps, create the plan. And when you do, that's the beginning. That's the toughest part. So I want you to bear this in mind. This is the toughest part. So what do appropriate milestones look like and how are they placed? So let's start with a bit of a definition, okay? A significant point is what you make of it. So if you're learning to cook, making eggs, right, sunny side up, right? Or what do they call it? Eggs over easy, isn't it? Without breaking the yolks, that might be significant to you. Right? So that's a significant point. That might be significant to you. But if you're a professional chef, making eggs might not even count as a warm-up. So this is not about comparing yourself. So how do you decide what is significant? And it's quite simple, by looking at your larger goal. Right? By looking at your larger goal. The professional chef, the goal for the professional chef might be to master the full Irish breakfast or English breakfast, so it can be added to the menu, perfecting it. But the amateur might just simply want to cook themselves breakfast before they go to work. So what's significant to you may not be as significant to others. But that's what makes setting milestones so tricky. You need to understand your start and your end points to know which markers to set in the middle. So you have to know where you're going to, and you have to know where you're starting from for you. And this is when we set out your goals. Okay. And then on top of all that, you're going to have to plot them out on a timeline. And then you're going to have to stay motivated, and you're going to have to track your successes, and you're going to have to learn from your mistakes. So there is a bit of work to do. But this is the beauty of milestones, because you don't have to put in such huge effort to discover you've gone on the wrong track when you're 30, 40 miles down the road and exhausted. You can set these milestones so you can keep track of this. Now, the other thing I've got to say to you, no matter what, try as you might, you're not going to meet every milestone you set for yourself. But it's important that you don't punish yourself. Sometimes you'll make mistakes, you just got to learn from them, and then you're going to set another milestone. And hopefully it'll be more achievable this time. And that's what comes from measuring those milestones. You start to become more educated around your goals and your steps and what you need to do to get there. And understand that that's okay. It's going to happen, but you got to do what you need to do. Now, some people say, does that mean so if I don't meet a certain milestone, I have to scrap my other milestones down the road because I failed to meet this one? Well, not necessarily, but you may need to delay them sometimes. And this is when you'll often hear me talk about when you talk about goal setting and the importance of, or what I've often met with a lot of people is when they're on the route to goal and they don't meet a milestone, is they end up changing the goal. And the important thing the message I really want to declare to people is, if what you're doing is not working, you never change the goal, you just change the plan. And sometimes you will always get to where you need to go. If you understand that goal and why it's so important to you, you will always get to where you need to go. But sometimes you might end up finding a completely different way to get there. And I've done this multiple times in my life. Multiple times. The goal that I set out on many years ago, the goal that I had in my mind as a young teenager, has come into fruition in a complete different way than I expected. I mean, complete different way. And I had that route changed so many times. And I'm happy to say I'm achieving that goal. But it was nowhere near the way I thought it was going to happen way back. And I had to have a lot of setbacks, but we'll keep moving forward. And I keep that goal is at the forefront of my mind all the time. And you should keep that goal, whatever that goal is to you. Take the time to really think about what it is you want. And then you're going to find a way there. Once you start setting out the goals, once you take the time to actually apply this. Now, the other thing what's really important, by the way, is reward yourself along the way. Because when they talk about, so many people get frustrated and annoyed or beat themselves up because they haven't achieved goals, but you got to reward yourself along the way. This is really important. And by the way, rewards are not just for reaching your big picture goals, right? You gotta motivate yourself to keep setting milestones by giving yourself small gifts along the way. Now, when I say I got small gifts too, I gotta say you be careful, right? Because you gotta be careful that they're not too small. Okay, they're not too small, because just like, well, I hope that you never would, right? But just like you wouldn't give your friend or a client a cheap gift, you shouldn't give one to yourself either. Don't cheat yourself, right? Don't say for the sake of it, I'll give myself a gift of something that's not really relevant, that's cheap, right? So don't give yourself a small gift. Give yourself something that really rewards yourself. Give yourself something that you normally wouldn't buy, or buy something that you wouldn't normally do, but you would love to own. You know, those things that you look at sometimes in the shelves, and go, will I want it? I won't. Do it. When you achieve a milestone, reward yourself, because this is getting you excited. This is exciting the brain. And once you start exciting the brain, you start making conscious decisions about what it is you want, and subconsciously you're going to find a way there. Okay, so don't give yourself too small a reward. give yourself something you would never normally buy, but you'd love to own. Now, obviously, don't go out and buy yourself a big new sports car because you hit your step goal, right? Or maybe you can, I don't know, but you know, but buy something that's high end, even if it's a mug, or it's, you know what I mean, or something that's high end, or if you're somebody that's into sports, a high end water bottle, right? Whatever it is, there's something that you won't spend that extra few quid on because it's high. Just get out and do it, right? Buy something that's going to excite you a little bit more, and you know what? And also give yourself a break. Give yourself a break. It's really important. Once you start achieving these goals or the things that you don't achieve, give yourself a break. But I promise you this, if you keep exciting yourself by rewarding yourself, you will find more ways, more better ways, right? Like, we also have to understand that life is bigger than any one milestone. Okay. If you have something to celebrate, indulge a little, right? And if life deals you a setback, which life does sometimes, life has a habit of getting in the way, right? Realize that it may take some time to get back on track. But what's most important is that you maintain that positive attitude. And that's where your goal setting is going to help you too, because you go back and review your goals. You start looking at all the things you've achieved by tracking those milestones. If you're struggling to set and stick to your milestones, don't give up. Get a partner. Make sure it's somebody who will be firm but fair with you. I used to say get a friend or a family member, but I'm not so sure that works out too well, right? So get yourself a mentor or a coach, and get somebody who will be firm and fair with you. The other thing is, don't insist that the accountability partner progresses through your milestones with you, right? Because you don't want to do a type scenario, or everyone. I suppose everyone has to achieve their own goals, right? Because I've seen so many people go, yeah, I'll do it if you do it, right? I'll do it if you do it. That's not what's going to motivate other people. So when you understand your milestones and understand why it's so important, you have to understand that the people who are going to hold you accountable will have their own goals to achieve, right? But make sure you do ask them to hold you accountable, but don't expect them to step up to your goal. If that makes sense. So let's give you some strategy, right? I think you're ready for strategy. So let's give some strategy, okay? So let's think about starting to set some personal goals. So the first thing you do is you set your goals on a number of different levels, okay? First, you're going to create your big picture. That big picture and what it is you want to do with your life. That space, that place you want to get to. But you're going to feel energized. You're going to feel love in your own life, that you've achieved what it is you want to achieve. So let's say over the next 5 years, we got to think maybe 5 years from now, you want to think about where it is you want to be and identify large scale goals, right? We're going to touch on a number of different areas that we can do this on later on. I'll share it with you, but I want you to think about 5 years from now and think big, think really big, right? Then what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to break them down into smaller and smaller targets that you must hit to reach your lifetime goals. These are your milestones, right? So you break them down, just like I said, at 183 kilometers to do, I'm going to do that one at a time. So I measured it based on where it was going to be and how it was going to be and how further I would get, right? So when you break them down into smaller targets, then it'll help you to reach those goals. But you must break them down, otherwise it can become overwhelming. Finally, once you have your plan, you start working on it. That's how you're going to achieve these goals. So this is why we start the process of goal setting by looking at your lifetime goals. Then we work down to the things that you can do in, let's say, the next 5 years, the next year, the next month, the next week, and today. So you can start moving forward. So step one, setting your lifetime goals. This is the first step in setting personal goals. And what you have to consider is what you want to achieve in your lifetime, at least by a significant and distant age in the future. Setting lifetime goals gives you the overall perspective that shapes all other aspects of your decision making. It'll give you a broad, balanced coverage of all important areas in your life. So try to set some goals in the following categories or in other categories of your own, and understand why these are important to you, by the way. So I'm going to give you some categories that you can set goals in, but you might want to add some you may want to take some out. Some different people will have different ideas. So this is what I'm just going to share with you guys, so you can identify where you want to make differences and what categories you want to work on. So let's start with business, right? So if you're going to set goals in business, you have to ask yourself, okay, for your business goals, what level do you want to reach in your business? Or what do you want to achieve in your business? How many team members, maybe? Do you want to have a staff? Do you want to have team members? How many team members? What's your location of your business? And then you also have to understand what's really important is what specifically will be your role in the business. And then also how many functions to your business. So when you start thinking about your business, now this is something we're working towards. You got to be working towards an ideal. So look at your ideas in your business, and there are just some ideas around it. The next thing could be your home, your house, right? What would it look like? Now, people go, you know what, that's a bit materialistic. It doesn't matter. It's what's important to you. If this doesn't matter to you, that's okay. It doesn't matter to you. But if it is important to you, it's important to you, and that's it. So when it comes to your home, think about what would it look like? You know, what home would you like? What colors would you use? Maybe even start decorating it in your mind. What type of furniture? Is it a big house? Is it a 10-bedroom house with a fountain out the front with 5 acres of gardens, landscape gardens? Is it a 1-bedroom bungalow, little cottage somewhere? Doesn't matter, whatever it means to you. So think about the house. Think about what it would look like. The colors, can you see the colors that would be in the room? What type of furniture? How big? Does it have a pool? So keep thinking, what would it look like? And now when I say thinking what it would look like, you got to write this down, by the way. Okay, you got to write this down. Then you got to think about financials. How much do you want to earn? By what stage? By when? And then also you have to ask yourself, how is this related to your career goals? Because if your career goals aren't big enough, you're not going to reach the financial ones. If your financial ones are not big enough, you're not going to reach the career ones. You're going to have to create a connection in there, right? Because they're both going to be connected. Maybe education. Maybe there's an education goal. Is there any knowledge that you want to acquire in particular? Right? What information or skills will you need in order to achieve that goal? So that's education. Family is another area. So maybe when you think about setting family goals, do you want to be a parent? Right? And if so, how are you going to be a good parent? And you have to think about this. And how do you want to be seen by your partner or by members of your extended family? Maybe some people don't care. I don't know, but these are just ideas that you attach to these goals. How much time do you want to spend with your family? And your family, by the way, is everybody. It's your extended family. Maybe you don't want to have kids. That's okay too. Maybe your kids are grown up. They're older now, and so you're not going to have any more kids. But maybe you want to spend more time with them. I don't know. That's up to you to decide. So then again, you can ask yourself, well, what activities are you going to participate in together? So these are the questions. You need to start thinking about this and putting it in setting these goals. Now you have to understand, these are your goals. The people, if you're attaching people to them, might say, I don't want anything to do with that. That's okay. But you'll figure it out. But trust me, you'll figure it out. Once you set it down, you'll figure it out. Another area you could work on is personal development. So is there any part of your mindset that's holding you back that you want to improve on? Is there any part of the way that you behave that upsets you that you need to change? And if so, you're going to have to set a goal to improve your behavior, or maybe a goal to find a solution to the problem. So there are many things you can do in order. Once you understand this personal development, you can, go to seminars, buy books, but get involved. There's multiple things you can do here when you start thinking about your personal development. And that's really got to do with your mindset, things that you want to improve your life on and improve how you feel. Then we have physical goals, right? So maybe there are fitness goals that you want to achieve. Or maybe you want to have good health into old age, whatever old age is. It's not 50, right? So then you have to ask yourself, okay, if I want to set my physical goals, you have to put the reasons behind why it's important to you. And then you have to discover, well, what steps are you going to take to achieve this goal? Another area you could be working on is fun and recreation. How do you want to enjoy yourself? Now, you should ensure that some of your life is for you, by the way. How many holidays do you want? Where do you want to go? What do you want to do to have fun and recreation in your life? What do you want to do to have fun for you? I highly suggest that you include this one in your list of goals. Highly suggest it. Then maybe you have a goal for a car. Do you have a dream car? If you have a dream car, what is it? What color is it? How does it drive? How does the engine sound? What's it feel like when you sit in? What does it have? Leather seats? Does it have, does it have bucket seats? Does it have a sports steering wheel? Or is it a family car? Is it a Jeep? Whatever it is. If that's important to you, that's important to you. And then in the last area I talk about, and as I said, you can add different categories into this if you like, and more suitable for you. But for me, contribution is something that's important. And I keep thinking, in my contribution goals, what can I do to make a difference in the world? And then I have to ask, before I do that, you've got to ask yourself, do you want to make a difference, a positive difference in the world? You don't have to. I highly suggest you do. But do you want to? And if so, how? And that takes time to think about it. How? So the importance of spending time brainstorming these things and then selecting the one or two more goals in each category, by the way, that best reflect what you want to do. Then consider trimming them again, so you can have a small number of really significant goals that you can focus on. Because if you create too much broad stuff, way too much, it's going to become overwhelming. So we got to break it down into the ones that are most applicable to you and the ones that really drive you, the ones that you're really passionate about. Find those first and give them most of your attention. Because as you do this, by the way, make sure that the goals you have set are the ones that you generally want to achieve, not the ones that your parents, your family, or your employer might want, right? If you have a partner, you might want to consider what he or she wants. However, you've got to make sure to remain true to yourself. This is so important. Now, step 2 to this is setting smaller goals. So once you've set your lifetime goals, set a 5-year plan of the smaller goals that you need to complete if you were to reach your lifetime plan. So therefore, what you got to do is you got to create a 1-year plan, a 6-month plan, a 1-month plan, and a weekly plan of progressively smaller goals that you should reach to achieve your lifetime goals or milestones. Each of these should be based on the previous plan. No point doing an activity if it's not moving you towards your goals, right? So you've got to ask yourself, do all of my current activities equal my current or future goals? And if they don't, you're going to change it. So then what you got to do is create a daily action, a list of things that you should do today to work towards your lifetime goals. Now, at an early stage, your smaller goals might be to read books, gather information on the achievement of your higher level goals. And I highly suggest you do this too, because this will help you improve the quality and the realism of your goal setting. So finally, review your plans and make sure that they fit in the way which you want to live your life. The next step then is staying on course. Once you've decided your first set of goals, keep the process going by reviewing and updating your action list on a daily basis. Periodically review the longer-term plans and modify them to reflect your changing priorities and experience. A good way of doing this, by the way, is to schedule regular repeating reviews or using a diary. As you can see up here, I have my success diary. That's what I use it for, is to keep managing and checking, testing, measuring to make sure you're staying on course, beg your pardon. So sometimes you got to find a tool to help you there. Now, if you want to go further, we're going to think about some other goal setting tips, right? I'm going to give you some guidelines that will help you set effective, achievable goals, right? So the first thing you're going to do, first step is state each goal as a positive statement. Okay, set each goal as a positive statement. Express your goals positively. Execute this technique well, by the way, because it's much better goal than don't make this stupid mistake, right? So when we talk about goals, when we say I'm going to express my goal, I'm going to say I'm going to execute this technique well, rather than saying I better not make this stupid mistake. Does this make sense? because it's not going to excite your brain when you use negative language. Even when people think, I'm going to be strong, I'm going to break down the walls, I'm going to not make any stupid mistakes. No, it's powerful, sounds motivating, but it's not really inspirational, and that's what's going to drive you forward. So when you talk about setting each goal as a positive statement, again, say, I'm going to execute this technique really well. I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to achieve all I need to achieve. And that's it. Not, I'm going to accept and achieve regardless of what gets in my way, regardless of, no. Make it a very strong statement of intent. Really positive statement. The next thing is to be precise. Set precise goals, putting in dates, times, and amounts so you can measure achievement. Now, if you can do this, you know exactly when you have achieved a goal, and you can take complete satisfaction from achieving it. This is something I do a lot when it comes to sales. And I work with people in sales. We say, okay, let's set a target. How many sales are you going to do? And by when are you going to do them? Oh, in 3 months' time, I'd like to have 30 new clients. Okay, now, so let's break that down. That means we'll have 10 clients per month. Excellent. So that means we've 2.5 clients per week, right? So we break it down and we say, what do we have to do? What's the action we have to do this week to make sure we get 2.5 clients this week, right? And we measure all the activity that's moving us towards that goal. Now, the reason I say it, we put the dates, we put in time scales for us to achieve it, and we're putting in the amounts of what has to happen in order to measure that achievement. This is the same of any goal. It doesn't matter. It's not just sales, it's of any goal. So again, be precise, set precise goals. Now, here's what I believe is one of the most important parts: set priorities. When you have several goals, give each one of them a priority. This is what will help you becoming overwhelmed by having too many goals, and it helps you to direct your attention to the most important ones. So set priorities. And when it comes to life, set priorities to your goals other than life getting in the way. The next step is write your goals down. This crystallizes them and it will give them more force, simply because when you put pen to paper as you're writing down your goals, it is impossible to think of anything else at the same time other than what you're actually writing when you put pen to paper, believe it or not. And what that does is it concentrates the mind. So this is why we write down goals, not just to write them down and put them up on the vision board so they look well, or just to say, you know, every time you meet people over a 10-year period, oh yeah, I have goals written down. I have my goals here. I have my goals book. Yeah, and the date is 1995, right? But write down the goals, crystallizes it, gives them more force. It actually concentrates your mind. Okay, and then again, bearing in mind, we're not just writing them down; we're taking action towards the goal, right? Then the next step is to keep operational goals small. Okay, and remember the big goal, but operational goals, we keep them small. Keep the low level goals that you're working towards small and achievable. Because if the goal is too large, it can seem that you're not making progress towards it, right? So if you're trying to get your 5-year goal without breaking it down to operational goals, the operational goals are the things you're going to do on a day-to-day basis, the actions, the activities you're taking. And they should be small enough that they move you towards the big goal. You know, we have a saying, how does a mouse eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? So keeping goals small and incremental gives you more opportunities for reward, by the way. And remember, if you start rewarding yourself, you start getting excited. The brain starts to get excited. It starts to look for more. Now, the next step is to set performance goals, not outcome goals. All right. Now, this is something that's also really important because people say, oh, you set all these goals. And again, you're setting outcome goals is just a wish list. Performance goals is what's going to make it happen. So you should take care to set goals over which you will have as much control as possible, because it can be quite dispiriting to fail to achieve a personal goal for reasons beyond your control. And usually what happens is people set something that's so big and they're not in control of how they're going to make it happen. And, you know, life or other people or something else determines the outcome of that goal, and that can be disheartening. So what you're going to do is break it down. Performance goals. What do I need to do in order to get to where I need to be at? Right now, in business, these reasons could be bad business environments or unexpected effects of government policy. Right. In sport, it could be poor judging, right? Bad weather, injury, or just plain bad luck. right? So some things you understand, there's performance goals, not outcome goals, right? This is the journey, right? The journey. And you know, again, if you base your goals on personal performance, then you can keep control over your achievement of your goals and draw satisfaction from them. Because if you just don't meet every outcome, don't be disheartened. Look at your performance. Look at how could I contribute here. If there are things that have gone on, you looked at things in my life in the past, and I thought, oh, that didn't really work, and I might have been annoyed or angry because it was an outside source. And then when I actually sit back and I go, hang on a moment, what did I contribute here? This is taking personal responsibility. What did I contribute here? Or what did I not contribute to this goal? So maybe there's something I could do different. So I look at my performance in the lead up to this goal. Then, you know, here's what I got to say to you. Okay, when I say the next one, as I say, set realistic goals. Now, realistic, by the way, is anything is possible. Just so you understand that. That's not an excuse for you to play small. But it's important also to set goals that you can achieve. All sorts of people, for example, employers, parents, media, society, can set unrealistic goals for you. They'll often do this in ignorance of your own desires and ambitions. So this is when, you know, realistic goals are the ones that you want to become your reality. So when you do this, when you allow yourself to set goals because of other people's expectations, it can often happen that you can set goals that are too difficult because you might not appreciate either the obstacles in the way or understand quite how much skill that you might need to develop in order to achieve a particular level of performance. And usually that happens when it's not a goal that you want to do. Right? So the realistic goals are the ones that are part of your reality. But again, when you do achieve a goal, take the time to enjoy the satisfaction of having done so. Absorb the implications of goal achievement and observe the progress that you made towards other goals. If the goal is significant, reward yourself appropriately. All of this will help build your self-confidence that you deserve. And again, once you experience having achieved this goal, review the rest of your goal plans. If you've achieved the goal too easily, make your next goal harder. Right? If a goal took a huge length of time to achieve, make the next one a little easier. Break it down a bit more. Okay? If you'd learn something that would lead you to change other goals, then do so. If you've learned in the process, hang on a moment here's what happens. People keep holding on. I won't give in, I won't give in, I won't give in. No, that's not what this is about. If you learn something that will lead you to change other goals, then do it. Don't keep beating yourself up. Sometimes I talk about chasing the destructive goal. Right? And that's the one that pulls you down because stubbornness or willpower or ego gets in the way. Right? Let it go. Sometimes you got to change what you're doing. I might have to change some of the goals. If you recognize that, and that's a learning is what you're doing, then do it. Just change it. But we don't lose sight of the main goal. We just change the plan. If you notice a deficit in your skills despite achieving the goal, decide whether to set goals to fix this. So remember that failing to meet goals does not matter that much, just as long as you learn from the experience. Feed lessons learned back into your goal setting. Remember, too, that your goals will change as time goes on. Adjust them regularly to reflect growth in your knowledge and experience. And if goals do not hold any attraction any longer, consider them letting them go. And then step up. Step up and start looking at how can you achieve other goals. Now, if we think about it, I'm going to share 10 steps with you where you can achieve any goal. And in order to achieve any goal, you're going to need heart and intelligence and courage. And they're all valuable traits. But they do pale in comparison to what each person needs most in the quest to total life success. And that's personal accountability. That's number one, personal accountability. So now most time when we use that word accountability, people go, oh, they start to shake and they get a bit nervous about it, right? And because they find it's like a negative, uninspiring view of accountability that has been reinforced, to people is kind of, I think the dictionary defines it as being subject to having to report to, explain, or justify, or being answerable, or being responsible, right? So people have a negative connotation sometimes to the word. But staying true to yourself and your goals should not be a drudgery. You must view your accountability as a gift to yourself. a voluntary mindset to ensure success, not something that you're force feeding yourself, even though you might hate it. Okay. The second step is you got to think as if your life depended on it. When you shift to a determined creative mindset, you begin to discover solutions for challenges that you may have believed were out of your control. If your life depended on it, would you come up with a new idea or strategy to save yourself? Absolutely. The goal you want to achieve or the problem you want to solve probably is not a life or death scenario, but many creative solutions come when you put everything on the line. While your life may not be at risk, your happiness and success are. The third step is when you can't control your circumstances, don't let your circumstances control you. I have a story that I share when I talk about this, and it goes back to March 22nd on 2012. The state army of Mali stormed the presidential palace, overthrowing the West African country's 20-year-old democracy. In the turmoil, Islamic militants took control of 2/3 of the country and crushed the upcoming democratic elections. It was a tragic moment when this coup happened. And the mayor of a small town of Uselesibugu, I think that's how I'm pronouncing it. But this town is located approximately 40 miles from the chaos. And the mayor was quoted as saying, "When I came into my living room, I completely collapsed on the couch. My wife came and kicked me, and I couldn't believe it. And I told her, I'm looking for sympathy. Why are you kicking me? And she just said, get out there and do something." So whether you get off the couch on your own, or sometimes you require a little kick from somewhere else, the point is get out there and do something. Do something towards the goal. There is something you can do. The fourth step is you got to want it more than you don't want it. Everything will exact a price from you. It will exact energy, effort, patience, resources. Now, it's natural to want all the good things in life without paying the price. You might want to lose weight, but you don't want to exercise or sacrifice your favorite foods. You might want a promotion, but you don't want to put in the extra hours. Success comes when you hit a tipping point and you begin to desire your goal more than you dread the cost of reaching it. But let me say this to you, every goal has a price to pay. You've got to be prepared to pay the price. Step number 5 is don't let gravity pull you down. Just as massive planets produce gravity, drawing everything towards them, it seems that tough problems and challenges, obstacles have enough mass to pull you away from getting what you want. The force gets bigger and stronger as the challenges get larger and tougher, but you don't give in. You never give in. You never give in. You stay focused and you stay in the game. You never give in. Don't let gravity pull you down. You don't know how close you are. Step 6, every breakthrough requires a bold stroke. And when I talk about this, I often talk about Jim Carrey, the actor who grew up so poor. And most people know who Jim Carrey is, right? But he grew up so poor that his family lived in a van after he thought he lost his job. And at one point, they actually slept in a tent in a relative's lawn. But Jim Carrey believed in his own future and the things that he wanted to accomplish in his life. And as his story, he shares that one night, during his struggling comic career, he drove his Toyota, his old beat up Toyota, to the Hollywood Hills. And while overlooking Los Angeles, he pulled out his checkbook and wrote himself a check for $10 million. He scribbled in a notation line, "for acting services rendered," and stuck it in his wallet. And in that moment, he cemented his personal resolve. Over the next 5 years, Carey's promise to himself led to worldwide fame. At the peak of his career, his per film paycheck reached $20 million. When you discover your own internal power, you see that you have the right, you have the ability, even the obligation to create your own best reality. Number 7 is to ask for feedback. Soliciting advice from others creates accountability. For this to work, you will need to convince your mentor, your friend, your colleague, or significant other whom you are appealing to that you want to know what they really think. The evaluator needs to know that he won't suffer any blowback if they're totally honest. Feedback is the key to overcoming blind spots and achieving better results. So ask for feedback. Step number 8, ask yourself, am I a renter? Am I an owner? Because we care more for the things we own than the things we rent. Because we don't have so much invested in the things that are temporary, there's not much at stake. However, here's a question. Have you ever watched a rental car? Probably not, right? But whether you own something, whether it's a car, it's an assignment, a relationship, you make an investment. usually involving some degree of sacrifice. When you rent, you can walk away without losing anything. If you're really committed to achieving your goal, you got to go on in. You got to own it. You got to take ownership of it and accept it as yours. Because when you own it, you go all in. So don't go in with a renter mindset. You got to go in with an ownership mindset. Number 9 is to prepare to move a lot of dirt. I often watch the Discovery Channel. It's a great program. I watched Gold Rush. How I watch these programs in a completely different way to everybody else. I always seem to find something in there. But I've discovered for me that finding solutions is just like digging for gold. And in that show, Gold Rush, it follows the life of modern day miners as they compete against time, right? And nature, by the way, because sometimes they compete against time and nature in order for the hope to strike it rich. But the first thing the miners have to do is they got to remove a top layer of maybe 6 to 12 feet of dirt and rocks before the mining even starts. But this seemingly worthless and painful 6 to 12 feet, once they get through that, they hit what they call the pay dirt. The more pay dirt that they process, the more gold they potentially find. So in the end, they got to move several tons of dirt just to find 1 ounce of gold. It's hard work, but it yields rich rewards. The bottom line to success is to keep digging. Whatever your goal is, whatever it is, you're going to have to move a lot of dirt. Keep digging. You keep digging. And understand when you go through the process, as difficult as it is, you may be just a foot from gold. There was a wonderful in the wonderful book, the Napoleon Hill,
Think and Grow Rich.
Think and Grow Rich. He talks about being 3 feet from gold. You know, and you may be just 3 feet from gold. You got to keep digging. But trust me, in order to get there, you're going to have to move a lot of dirt. And step number 10 is make it happen. How do you do that? How do you really make personal accountability work for you? Now, wouldn't it be easy if there was a switch that you could just flip, an easy button that you could push, maybe an app that you could use? But the truth is, there really is a flipping magical switch app button. It's called making a choice and acting on it. Because once you do it, it becomes easier. You have the choice to fulfill your aspirations or wallow in the game of blame and victim cycle. True success does not come from the outside, but it comes from within. There is no wizard. Taking greater personal accountability is the key to succeeding in everything you do. What are you prepared to do to achieve your goals? And I would be suggesting to you that you write down the heading, my most important goal is, and then answer it. Write it down and put as much content to that answer as you can possibly think of. Give yourself the opportunity to create the goal you want to create. Now, Theodore Roosevelt was quoted as saying, be practical as well as generous in your ideals. Keep your eyes on the stars, but remember to keep your feet on the ground. You're setting goals. You want to achieve. You want to achieve things, and you should achieve great things in this world. You can achieve great things in the world. You can have anything you want. But you got to go out there and you got to do this, and you're going to keep your feet on the ground, because you will be an inspiration to somebody else. You can be a role model. Don't let your ego get in the way. So remember, keep your eye on the stars, but keep your feet on the ground. Reach out, get whatever it is you want out of this life. You truly are entitled to it if you put in the work. But remember why you're here. So find some final thoughts I can share with you is, for some people, they're already finding goal setting difficult, right? So what more can they do if they have to set milestones? To progress, also means progressing towards your larger goals. So think about that larger goal that you want to do. You got to set those little milestones, and you got to define each milestone as importantly as you define the larger goal. Okay. Now, defining your milestones on your own, by the way, may not be easy at first, but you can start with these tips until you get used to it. Now, let me say something else here, and I want you to really take this message away. There is no perfect timing or condition. You've got to discover what you truly want and then decide to go after it. You got to remember that this is your goal. You do not need permission. You do not need everyone to understand it right now. You got to make it yours. You got to own it. You got to feel it. You got to do it. If you want to achieve what you want in this life, you must start to work on it now. Now is always the best time. Have an outstanding day.
Pat, thank you.
Thank you, Pete.